Good morning. Please welcome panel moderator Erica Bomsey.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate you being here. I realize you had a couple of other options that you could have had this morning, including staying in bed. So very much appreciate you choosing us this morning. I will be facilitating a conversation between two pairs of lawyers and chief information security officers, and we're going to talk about the importance of those relationships. And with that, I'd like to introduce my panelists.
Hi.
Great. So first, I have Angela Messeri. She currently serves as the Corporate Director and Assistant General Counsel for Cybersecurity and Privacy at Northrop Grumman. Prior to joining Northrop Grumman, Angela served 23 years with the federal government in the national security, defense, military, and intelligence communities. She was one of the primary authors of Executive Order 14028, improving the nation's cybersecurity and national security. Next to her is Dr. Phyllis Schneck. Dr. Schneck is the Vice President and Chief Information Security Officer at Northrop Grumman. Prior to joining Northrop, Dr. Schneck served in numerous government and private sector roles, including as Deputy Undersecretary for Cybersecurity and Communications at the Department of Homeland Security and Chief Technology Officer for the Global Public Sector at McAfee. Dr. Schneck was also a member of the Center for Strategic and International Studies Commission on Cybersecurity and National Chairman of the Board of Directors for the FBI's Public-Private InfraGard program. Next, we have Adam Cohen. Adam currently serves as Senior Director and Associate General Counsel for Cybersecurity at Capital One, where he leads the company's cyber legal team and its support for cyber operations. Prior to joining Capital One, Adam spent 10 years in the FBI, serving in several capacities, including as Principal Legal Counsel for a number of complex cyber criminal cases and counterterrorism investigations. Chris Nim is the Executive Vice President and Chief Information Security Officer at Capital One. Prior to his time as CISO, Chris led the Cloud Productivity Engineering Division at Capital One beginning in 2020. Prior to joining Capital One, Chris served as Senior Vice President and Chief Information Security Officer for Verizon Media, which he joined through its acquisition of AOL. While at AOL, Chris served in variety of technology and security roles, including Senior Resident and Chief Information Security Officer. Chris also led the cybersecurity due diligence and rebuild for Verizon's acquisition of Yahoo. So with that, I am going to turn us over to Dr. Schneck, who is going to kick off our panel.
Thank you, Erica, and thank you everybody for being here. Good morning. Happy Thursday morning of RSA. Love the energy. Look, I know this is a great show, and it enables all of us to come together and see so many aspects of cybersecurity, and most importantly, how cybersecurity affects our global day-to-day life. And with that, the role of being a chief information security officer or a lawyer or any part of cybersecurity right now has evolved, even in the past few years, given the speed of computing, the new regulatory items that are coming through, and the way the world really leverages our electronic assets. I think our roles as chief information security officers, or CISOs as we call them, span across all of our companies, all of our roles. It is a very hard job. It's one that I love dearly, the company, the mission, the people, the community, but it's very, very difficult to get this right. As all of you know, in any aspect of cybersecurity, we face an adversary that doesn't have any lawyers. There is no Angela, there is no Erica, there is no Adam. They execute with an alacrity we have yet to enjoy as a civil society because we have laws. And our legal teams help us to do the right thing. They help us to preserve our way of life and to innovate and to enjoy the new technologies and to mitigate the risks that come with it. And we put this panel together, most importantly, to share with you some of the key parts of why this is so important, to have your lawyers and your security executives together as we drive this. This is what the adversary does not want us to be able to do. Back to you, Erica.
All right, thank you. So as a little bit of history, I was at Northrop Grumman prior to joining my current company, Leidos. So I was Phyllis's lawyer before Angela became Phyllis's lawyer.
And they survived.
So the first way that I want to kick it off then is to Angela. You've now been at Northrop for several months now, and you had a long, government career prior to joining the private sector. So let's start with how you've been doing on building these new relationships coming from government and into the private sector.
Sure, yeah. So I had the luxury of spending so much time in the government, advising on operations real time, but then also advising executive digital C-suite, the CIOs, CISOs, CDOs, chief technology officers. So when I came to the company, I brought with me that experience. And one of the first things that I typically do in new roles is I immediately meet everybody who I'll be advising and their leaders. So the managers, the directors. I set forth, one-on-one meetings. I start sitting in on the weeklies, the monthlies. We have one-on-ones. I start to understand when I first came in, I started to understand what are the challenges of the CISO, what are the priorities, where can I help? Identifying the new legal regime, regulatory structure that we've been dealing with over the last couple of years, as well as really, understanding the cyber threat landscape. I think that's really important for attorneys who are advising chief information security officers, engineers, technology developers. Also, we've set up, so both in the government and the private sector, we've been very intentional about setting forth in-house legal counsel focused on cyber and privacy and technology. With that, we're both at Capital One and NG. That's where the three of us sit, is directly advising cyber, the CIO, the CISOs. And there's really definite benefit to that because one, you have the lawyer with the specialty. They're walking the floor, talking with the cybersecurity professionals, the technologists. They're really understanding the challenges and the mission of those folks. We're also able to focus on the legal and the regulatory structure. One of the other things that I do is, setting forth full transparency and access. So, Phyllis is always inviting me and really including me as part of the cyber team, which I think is extremely beneficial, as well as when we're conducting, cyber defense activities, dealing with external third parties, information sharing efforts. We really have a close tie and relationship.
So we're going to take the flip side now. So Angela came and joined Phyllis, and as Angela begins advising Phyllis, but then in your situation with Chris and Adam was already in place, and then Chris changed roles and became the CISO. So how did you all navigate that with Adam as the grand cyber poobah that is welcoming you into your new role?
Big overstatement, but
no,
we'll roll with it from there.
you will forever be known as the cyber poobah.
Look out, Adam.
Yeah.
From now on, Grand Cyber Poobah.
I'll update my
Thank you.
LinkedIn profile when I get out
Yeah,
of here.
you should do that. Well, the first thing I had to do, honestly, was retrain Adam on everything he's doing. There's actually incredible benefit, right, to having Adam already there, knows the inner workings, the processes of the cyber organization. So there's a ton of value in that. And so I was able to focus on more strategic things with Adam along the lines of, how do we get to know each other as human beings? That is so critical. As well as, what are the routines going to be going forward for how we operate? I feel very strongly, similar to Angela, what you said, the way that you were included in the cyber leadership. Having Adam, if I were to just treat him in a very transactional way and just invite him to a particular meeting because there's a topic that I know we're going to discuss this related to a legal matter in cyber, he's not going to have the full context that I need him to have. And so I was able to focus on making sure that he was in all of our leadership routines, whether it be weekly meetings or offsites, and participating in everything that my senior leadership team is doing on a day-to-day basis so that he has the full context of what we're doing in cyber and why. And that really speeds up the interaction when it comes to a particular legal issue that might arise. And then honestly focusing on just the human aspect and building trust, breaking bread together, having a meal, getting to know each other as humans. Like, this is such a critical relationship, and trust is so important that I've been prioritizing elements like that so that we have the relationship, so that when something interesting comes along at some point in the future, because it will, you have that foundation, you have that trust, you have a sense of what each other's personalities are going to be like. It's wise to even have very open, active discussions on, well, how do you behave under stress? Here's how I behave under stress, and here's what you should be able to expect.
And this is how Chris behaves under stress. It's even keel the whole time. There's no high, there's no low. It's right there in the middle. And I mean, that's the kind of leader Chris is. I mean, he really has he stepped into this role. His reputation preceded him at Capital One, at other stops before that. And we've been able to kind of have this great open relationship where it's I think the best way to describe the cyber attorney role sometimes is there's the big C counsel and the little C counsel. The big C is you're sitting there, you're talking about legally, can you do something? How do you do something? How do we mitigate the risk? That's you're focused on the legal aspects, but then there's the operational and reputational things that really isn't a traditional legal role, but you're engaging there in a space, and you're able to do that when Phyllis brings the attorney into the fold. You're hearing all this stuff, but yet you're a degree removed. You're not in the minutia of it every day where the whole cyber org is, and you have a different vantage point. You can help navigate and talk about these things just in a way that, again, is trusted. They're not looking to you to just say, oh, here's your lane, stay in your lane. You're a part of that team and really able to engage and speak through the kind of all-risk approach at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Phyllis, you've now had, I'll throw one at you. You've now had a number of lawyers that you've worked with in your time at Northrop Grumman. How do you break in your lawyers?
Oh, wow. Loaded question recorded here. I think it's about the team. I like what's been said, what Chris said about trust.
Yeah.
And our team, anything that would ever happen, knock wood that it wouldn't, but things that would happen, that's all hands on deck, right? And we're all in glass houses in cyber. And so I think it's really important to have that humor is a big part of this. And so getting to know somebody, Erica, I mourned the loss of Erica's beta fish, Indigo. So that shows how much I was in your office, right? But also, Angela, as you pointed out, when you got to know the teams as Erica did, you don't need to come to me to say, legal is going to call into the cyber team today. That's ridiculous, because the adversary moves a lot more quickly than that. And so when we have free access into our team and get to know the people on our team and get to know who we are, because it also helps me understand, even from a personnel perspective, how to make the team stronger. And I think we end up getting to know each other, as you said, about human beings. So it's breaking in a new lawyer quote. That's funny. It's like shoes, right? Because shoes sometimes still hurt after a while. But with lawyers, I think it's Thursday morning of RSA. Come on. I think it's important. We're people, right? And the law field is highly trained into some of the very specific regulatory aspects. What we're encountering right now in cybersecurity with everyone in this room and everyone at this conference is the ability to focus on our business, to keep our mission, our nations running, our world, our way of life, as we say at Northrop Grumman in our values, to do the right thing and to show up and do as we promise. That means that we execute, and we cannot execute as a full team, all hands on deck, without the legal expertise being a part of that team. Not the add-on that it's not phone a friend at the moment. It's include the friend. And that's helped me in my government career. It's helped me in prior and private sector. It helped me in grad school when I was learning about patent law with my own technology. And I've always thought this was a very big part of the team. They're separate organizations because the training's separate, but we have to execute together because the adversary does.
So you bring up a good point that I want to pull on a little bit more. Like as you heard during the bios, we've all had government. We've had government experience. So sticking with you for a minute, Phyllis, how has that prior government experience, shaped the way that you have, how has it changed for you? I mean, it was a very different legal and regulatory, regime number of years ago. Things have evolved. How has that attorney dependency changed and what have you brought forward from your government career?
That's a great question. So first of all, working for the US government was the honor of a career. I think you are thrown into situations, as we all know, but you're thrown into situations that just rack your brain on how are we going to address this? And the team comes together. I think the government's very, very good at that. We joke about information sharing and all that's been overcome over the past several years to make that better, and it has become much better. In the heat of the moment, the government's very, very good at bringing people together. And I think that culture is ingrained in me to, if there is an adversary or there's something we need to do to be more resilient, you bring everybody in. It doesn't matter what title they wear. You bring that expertise to the table. If it can help, it's a part of your starting lineup. And I think that culture and that forget the titles, just move out, is ingrained in all of us that came from government, and it helps the private sector. And vice versa, you learn a lot in private sector that is brought to government.
And then just continuing on with some of us others that have had, government service, I too have been an attorney providing, different advice. And I think sometimes the advice becomes a little bit different when you're on the government side of the house. The client is a little different. So, Adam, if I could turn to you and your prior government experience and what those attorney relationships look like.
So Erica noted I worked in the FBI for 10 years, and the FBI, the mission is unmatched there. And it's national security, it's law enforcement, and the most amazing part about being in the Bureau is whether you're a special agent, an intel analyst, professional staff, attorney, whatever it is, you're all in the same mission, you're in the trenches, and you are all swimming in the same direction. And one of the core values of the FBI is rigorous obedience to the Constitution. And so legal's in every conversation. You're making sure that legal is a part of discussions, and you go through and you have the need to execute it still, even though that's part of the mission, you need to execute it. You need to be intentional and deliberate as the attorney. And so one of the things I always did was I made sure to walk the floor every day. I went down, not just in with legal, went down where the agents and analysts are, and walked around and sat there and just engaged in conversation with people. Hey, well, I'm talking to one agent, another agent jumps over and says, hey, I'm dealing with a similar situation in my case, or hey, Cohen, when you're done, can you swing by my desk, we talk a little bit. That's how you build trust and confidence with people. You're working there, you're having these dynamic conversations. And I think that you're not just a transactional attorney sitting back in receive mode. And that's in the cyberspace where you really have to be, again, in the trenches there. And so that's why at Capital One, I sit with cyber. We have, if any of you are familiar with our McLean campus, we have 3 buildings, legal's in one of them, cyber's in another. I sit with cyber because I want that drive-by question. I want to sit there and somebody's come by and say, hey, Adam, you have a second? All right, let's go get the other stakeholders, have a conversation about it, and really resolve that in the moment. And that's how you really get immersed with people. So that's what I took from government is it's that shared mission. We always talk about cybersecurity as a team sport in terms of government working with private sector and all of us as different private entities working together. But even at the micro level, it's this team sport where legal and the operational folks that Chris leads, we're all in there having these conversations together and really working through complex problems in a moment.
I love listening to you all talking about what you're bringing in the experience of government, because I don't have that background. My interaction with government in the cyberspace was primarily incident related. Many of you have seen and were following what happened to Yahoo a number of years ago. So I was having to go in and have conversations with staffers at the Senate Intelligence Committee and the House Commerce Committee around, statements that Yahoo had made about what had happened during their incident, and in some cases having to take a different message after our acquisition had closed and take some bad news. And so I don't know if it was so much as being on the other side, but it was a very different experience. It was not the the feeling of joint mission and we're all in this together. It was a little bit more adversarial.
It's still informative, though.
Yeah.
It helps
Extremely
understand really their thoughts
We're the
are.
government,
help
we're here
shape
to help.
policy.
Yeah.
Extremely informative.
That's
probably
a
both
great
jump in.
point, because when you're on the private sector side, you want the government to give you all the information they can. You can't understand why you're not getting all of it. And when you're on the government side, there are a lot of reasons, so you share as much as you possibly can, and if you're not sharing, there's a good reason, and I think it helps to understand what's going on, the equities on both sides. That has helped a lot. And even in congressional testimony, it feels very different to be private sector and not government.
I realize not the topic of our panel necessarily, this government sharing side, but I think there's a number of times on the private sector side when you think that you want to keep the government at arm's length, and there are though opportunities to create that partnership there in a proactive and a healthy way. And I think having attorneys who have government experience are not going to tell their client, they are going to be able to advise their clients that it's okay to engage with the government and that it's safe to do so, and we can set this up in a healthy way so that maybe those scars aren't as deep as the ones that maybe.
And they're able to advise on how, like what's going to be the most effective way to interact in those settings could be very powerful.
Yeah, there's opportunity to engage with, right? There are a lot of companies that are now in the critical infrastructure. So they're sector risk management agencies, right? They have information sharing agreements. Typically, the lawyers will work with their partners, their business partners, the CISO, to develop those information sharing agreements under protected regimes. And then also within that same vein, you've got NSA, CISA. They're very and if you're international, right, there are other organizations that are actively putting out information to help the critical infrastructure, because right now we're actively under threat, and so we need to be able to utilize what the government is putting out and also partner with the government for information sharing in the like you said, in the strong, healthy, proper way to protect our
I think one other
equities.
thing that's worth noting also, the role of having kind of legal and cyber side by side is we can see things and they can see things. I shouldn't say we, they're all in this together, but like you're looking at the current legal and regulatory landscape and understanding where there may be opportunities. A lot of us have at large companies advocacy organizations that work and kind of engage on Capitol Hill and with different and have conversations with regulators of just like where can we lean forward, like where can we benefit more from partnership with the government and have those conversations. And again, when a lawyer is in the mix with cyber and you're able to have these open conversations and really talk about how can we leverage each other better between the government and private sector, you get everything's working in the right way. And that's where you want to be able to have it. You're seeing the same things in that moment together versus having conversations where it gets brought to you after the fact.
So as you're having those conversations, Adam, what are some of the secrets that you have, the secret sauce, to making those day-to-day relationships successful? Yes, you've mentioned how you used to walk the floor, for example. Are there some other examples that you can give for how you've been able to create that successful relationship?
Well, I think picking up where we just kind of, we're talking about a moment with the legislative landscape, that's one of the things that we've tried to do for the cyber legal team at Capital One is help to make sure Chris and his team are informed of like what's happening right now, what's over the horizon, to position them for success and help kind of navigate things out in advance. And I think that's where also legal can build that trust and confidence with their clients, so to speak. I hate the term clients, but that's just how attorneys and clients sometimes talk. But like you're sitting there, and if I'm able to share with them things that they may hear, but like that water cooler type talk of, hey, did you hear about this? But give them more context and color to what the different laws are, what the regulations are, what the key takeaways are. It kind of positions them to do their job better, and it makes legal a more integrated part of that team and a core relationship build there. And I think that's something that is really was, I don't want to say it was an ulterior motive for us to do it because it was part of the work, but it helps us start and cultivate that relationship and make sure that like, hey, you know what, they're seeing the value that legal brings, because sometimes that relationship with the attorneys isn't present. I've had the honor of speaking at the FBI CISO Academy multiple times the last few years I left the FBI. And what I've found surprisingly so many times is how often the chief information security officers don't have the close relationship that Chris and I enjoy, that Phyllis and Angela and Erica before her enjoyed. That to me seems like it's an organic thing that should happen and really kind of it's surprising when it doesn't, and hopefully that's one of the takeaways for all of you here is that really there is value in having that relationship. As Chris said at the outset, really building that trust, having the human element there, so you can have these open conversations where also you're a strategic kind of business advisor to them, not just a lawyer saying, hey, this is coming up, I don't want to get ahead of your people and bring it up to you, but here's kind of what I'm seeing as a potential risk and some things to think about to be that additional ear for him, because I'm not directly in Chris's chain of command, so to speak, but helping him think through some of the challenges that he has to confront in his role as CISO.
Do any others have some secrets to making that day-to-day successful?
I would just add, a lot of us are dependent on a very large supply chain, right? And in these roles, you sometimes have limited illumination as to what's happening 2 or 3 layers deep. Or you're in a small to medium company that may not have a very large legal team. You may not even have a dedicated, like we're lucky to have cyber and privacy attorneys. I would say go ahead. In this cybersecurity role, I think we need to really push, even if it's, quote, expensive or you pay for the hours, if you're dependent on an outside counsel, to work with your executive leadership to say, I need that relationship left of boom with that outside counsel. I need to establish that outside the company so that when, and unfortunately it's when, not if anymore, but when something happens of the cyber ilk, you know your team. It doesn't have to be a very large expense where you're meeting with them every week, but if you're only using outside counsel, you've got to know them ahead of time and what they're going to do for you and practice what that's going to look like.
I'll say something, I'll pivot off that. So outside external legal counsel can also bring attorney-client privilege communications. That is extremely important in the context of an incident response or any other legal liability case from a discovery perspective. That can be very dangerous if you're not operating with an attorney. You're operating in a very dangerous space there, where communications, documents, emails can possibly be discoverable. So that's very important. Exactly. If you don't have the in-house legal counsel, and if you do have the in-house legal counsel, utilizing external law firms, many law firms do have the cyber and privacy focus now within that specialty.
I will add in a little bit different angle, which is thinking about experiences that you may not have had yet, but you may have in the future, and how your legal counsel can help prepare you for that. First of all, building that relationship of trust in the midst of an incident is not the time you want to be building those relationships. Yes, it's, you're in the trenches together, you will definitely get to know each other and ideally build trust, but that's not the best way to build that trust. But thinking about some of the challenging experiences that I've had over the course of my career, countless depositions, testimonies, having someone who can sit with you and have open discussions about what that looks like and help preparing you, walking through doing exercises, like what's it going to be like if you have to testify in front of a, whether it be a court or, a committee down on the Hill, or what the experience is going to be when you're being deposed. It's always so much fun. You walk into this room, big table, you're there, you got a couple attorneys with you, and you got a bunch of people on the other side of the room, and they come in with a binder that's about that thick, and they drop it on the table, boom.
Just for dramatic effect.
Just
And they
for
open it.
effect.
This
Just
is
for
my
effect. It's actually
experience.
empty.
This has been my experience. And it has, this binder has every email and instant message and Slack and text that you've sent, over the course of a period of time. And then you sit there for hours on, Mr. Nims, can you tell us what you meant on February 3rd, blah, 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 when in this email to so-and-so you said X. And, sometimes out of context. And knowing how to navigate those circumstances would be time really well spent to practice some of those things in a very, unstressful environment when it's not the real thing. And legal counsel can help navigate that. And having lived through some of those experiences, my prior legal counsel, past companies were so valuable to me in preparing me for those sessions. And again, not waiting until the incident to do some of that practice would be really powerful and a good use of time.
Yeah, we just met with cyber as part of our all hands, just talked about like how words matter. Like you look at different kind of regulatory kind of just developments recently, and just making sure that, look, we all are human beings, we're all in this moment, we're all in this fight, but words do matter, and we have to be mindful of that as well. But it's funny, just talking about building trust and comfort. You were talking about breaking in shoes before. Jason Sudeikis, I don't know if you guys all saw his keynote the other day, but he's talking about just kind of perfect strangers. Went back and really dated himself of like a show then. He was talking about shoes. I was thinking about like this old Cheers episode where Cliff Clavin says the secret to life is comfortable shoes. And I'm sitting there thinking about how like you really want to break in those shoes and be comfortable before a thing happens,
Yeah.
to Chris's point.
So we've now sort of introduced this topic a little bit. So let's go into it a little bit more. Let's talk about the crisis. Let's talk about, you know, the importance of that relationship when you've moved off of the day-to-day and now you're in crisis mode. So, you know, how do you leverage that to manage the crisis? You've talked about how, you know, they're helping you with your murder boards, you know, before testifying, for example. Do you have other examples that you want to provide about that relationship during crisis?
Yeah, I'll start. You know, the key thing is over-preparing, honestly, so that you have the natural behavior and motion when a crisis comes. You know what to do. You know how to behave. You're not solely reacting based on the adrenaline that's pumping through your veins in the moment. So I really think for me, it goes back to really thoughtfully, intentionally thinking through what those circumstances will look like when they come, because they will come, and figuring out how you're going to behave in the moment. And that's, again, back to why building the relationship early and building trust early. You know, Adam jokes that Chris Nims under stress looks just like this. That may be true, but I promise you, in the moment of intense stress, that is an act. I talk about having a superpower of grace under pressure. I may be completely roiling on the inside and ready to fall apart, but nobody will know it. And I think for a CISO, that's super powerful. When you have a really significant incident going on in your company, the whole C-suite, everybody's hair is on fire. The CISO being able to be calm and cool and collected and rational in those moments is incredibly powerful, but that does not come naturally to most of us. And it requires a lot of preparation and a lot of practice so that, again, it becomes a natural motion when the incident comes.
I mean, that's just the definition of leadership. It's like you're not letting people see what's behind the curtain of all things like that, just the harried nature of things, because people are taking their cues from you. Particularly if a major cyber event happens at a company and you haven't had one before, people don't know what to expect. They're asking questions that, like, you just know, all right, this is a concern, we're okay, but you're having to deal with all of that in every direction. And particularly for me, I lead the cyber legal team, but there's a whole chain above me within our legal department, and making sure that you're ultimately educating people up your chain of command, pulling in the appropriate stakeholders. But all of that is trying to give the appearance of calm no matter what, because you know people take their cues from you. If you seem excited because you've seen all of it before, they're going to get excited too. So your role also is a little bit trying to keep kind of, here's what we know right now, this could change, but ultimately these are the facts as we know them at the moment right now.
And that proactive, you know, that role playing that can be done in advance, I think is powerful. I've heard countless stories of executives navigating really significant breaches, whether it's a CISO or a CIO or others, passing out in the board meeting from the pressure.
Oh, wow.
Or heart attacks, you know, of individuals on an incident response team in the midst of crisis. The stress on the human body is so real. So anything that you can do to help prepare yourself in advance so that not everything is new in that moment, I think can be so powerful.
Phyllis?
We do, as you know, we all do a lot of this role playing in the form of tabletop exercises. I joked with our leadership team about a couple of years ago, I said, I'm not going to order lunch because incidents aren't catered. Right? There aren't chocolate-covered pretzels in the corner when we discover the adversaries in the house.
It's days-old pizza at that point.
Pretty much, yeah. And having, I'll speak a lot from my past life, having worked through a lot of these. I'm trained as a nerd, but as an operator also. And looking both from government and private sector, having worked these for customers in the private sector, clients and stakeholders in the government, and in a few years also in some running a cyber risk management practice. I can tell you one of the biggest mistakes is not doing everything Chris just said, not being prepared, not having your sense of calm. The most important thing in the moment is your team. Your lawyers, everybody's part of your team. And taking care of the people that are hands on keyboard, looking at logs right now to try to figure out if somebody's overstepped memory and where. Because in their minds, they don't just want to protect the front end. You talk about stress. They're thinking about all the partners we have across our sector, across our industry, across the world, with the government. What can we put together to find information? If this is happening to us, it's like a roach. There's never just one. If this is happening to us, where else is it? And how can we get that information out to protect? It's not just at the leadership level. It is most intense at the team level. And the people that are doing the hard work. And I've been hands on keyboard with the team. And to me, one of the most important things that I'd add to this is understanding what they are experiencing in the moment and making them part of the TTX and understanding that the entire team is in this together. This is about maintaining our world, our way of life, our resilience, and our business. It isn't just focused on, oh my goodness, somebody overstepped a memory leak and there's a hole. It's bigger picture, it's take a step back, it's work it the right way, but you cannot do that without knowing who your team is up front, without knowing who they are as people. On our teams, we all know a little bit of where people's kids and nieces and nephews are, and we all know a little bit about each other, even though I have a very large team, but I try to know, and every level deep knows a little more about their people. That's the strong team in the end, and I always come back to that partnership. You can't phone a friend right of boom. You have to have a friend before the boom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just to add on that, we've talked a lot about communication and preparation. Communication is so important to prevent those miscommunications or misrepresentations when, in the heat of a moment, facts are flying around, they're changing every which way. Things are being put in writing. The accuracy of the facts is, as it is at that time. And, caveating it with those could change very rapidly. And in terms of the technical communication, that's another area where if you have a dedicated counsel who is familiar with the techno speak or that language, it can help divide that technical communication gap between the other multidisciplinary functions, the communications, if government relations is involved, the top executive leadership who may not have all of that technical, engineering, cybersecurity background. The lawyer can really help ground some of that communication and make sure it's accurately communicated up the chain as well, and externally, so both internally and externally.
And I'll just offer my perspective here as well, like a couple of points that I think is that in the time of crisis, the CISO is trying to stop the bleeding and is trying to ensure that all the roaches are being caught. And a lawyer has to be focused on, all right, but I have legal obligations now. And what are my priorities for trying to handle those legal obligations? I've got obligations to the government. I have obligations to individuals. I have obligations to states, depending on the sort of issue it is. And so being able to synthesize the information that's coming in from the cyber team being run by the CISO, and taking that and being able to translate it into those, action-oriented dealing with legal obligations, so that each can sort of fan out from the crisis and take care of the business that needs to get done, while feeding off of each other. This legal obligation needs this piece of information, so go back to the CISO and that team and get it. But then the CISO knows, okay, all those obligations are being taken care of by somebody else, and I can focus and make sure that the forensic work and the investigative work is getting done, and some prioritized, obligations are being taken care of by another partner. And then one other thing, talking about crisis and stress, I think the importance of the CISO and the attorney relationship is that the attorney provides a safe space, so that if the leadership needs to comport themselves in a calm way to exude calm for others, maybe there's you can go into the attorney's office and you can close the door and you can just take a minute, right? And know that you're in a safe place of partnership and support and camaraderie. And then, all right, you can put your game face back on and open the door and walk back out again, but at least you've got someone there. You don't need to be fully comported. You've got a safe person to pat you on the back.
Phyllis was smiling.
Yeah.
She just said that.
I've
She's
never
having
had
a
such a
flashback.
minute.
And I think that's part of the counsel relationship,
It is.
right? It's like you're not just an attorney, you're a counselor, and you keep your confidences close, and that's why you're a trusted partner there. So we're sort of winding up into like the tail end of our panel a little bit, and we've spoken a lot of things about the importance of this relationship, and in times of calm, in times of crisis. I will turn this to each of you for a moment to try and communicate some points that the folks here might be able to take back with them, that can be action-oriented, proactive things that folks can do, whether they are attorneys, whether they are CISOs or not, or anybody else in the audience, to sort of take some points back home with them. So Angela, I'll start with you.
Sure. Yeah. My number one is, I have a couple points. My number one is, identify your dedicated legal counsel for cyber issues. Those can also include privacy. There's a lot of interrelation between the privacy aspect, data, now artificial intelligence and technology. So whether that be your dedicated in-house legal counsel or your external legal counsel, make sure that you have already developed a relationship and identified those sources. The second one is, encourage the attorney to self-educate, and also as the CISO or cybersecurity experts, help build that knowledge base as well. If you have a general counsel who's just a general practitioner, they're not going to understand the intricacies that we may have on this panel. So help them as well in their quest for education in this field. They have to know the law and the legal regulatory aspect, but then also, what I had mentioned before, like the technical speak is still so very important. The third thing is just communication. If you don't already have one-on-ones or weeklies or monthlies with your CISO or your cybersecurity folks, including the ground folks on that cyber team, start doing that now. At least meet with your CISO at least on a weekly basis. Phyllis and I talk several times a day, evenings, weekends. We're always communicating, not just in the heat of the moment. She informs me on just kind of what's going on, even if there's not a legal issue. So I have full visibility, like I have a holistic view, and also include, consider yourself as if you're an attorney or if CISO, consider the lawyer as part of the cyber team. I think, that's really important. Consider them as part of the senior leadership team. Don't ever kick a lawyer out of a meeting. That's a huge red flag. I've seen those situations and it never ends well.
Phyllis, how about you?
I think to sort of pick up on what Angela was saying about the holistic, and I do, by the way, try to keep weekend calls to an absolute minimum. We're not, but there's a good relationship there, and we know if there's something that needs to get out before Monday, et cetera, that's there, and I truly appreciate that. I think two big points I would raise. You talked about, Angela, a lot about communication. From the cyber perch, and you all know this, but it just amplifies itself in the threat environment today. If there's a 0 day in the community somewhere, often that's because some highly paid adversary found that in a vendor that a lot of people use. That is no one's fault. But there's a beautiful, precious, scarce window between when you can fix that quietly and minimize its use to when the B team learns about it and just has their way with it on many, many other victims. And I think the partnership with legal allows us to quietly look for this in our own house, make sure that we're not running that version of the software. If we are, to get quickly with the vendor and patch that up before it can get used in a bad way. And then use the information channels, sharing channels that we have with our partners and our government. Angela mentioned your sector risk management agencies. Those are the agencies that are teamed up with whatever critical infrastructure your sector you're in. And everyone in here can align themselves with one of these sectors. But find the place to get your information so that through these channels, your legal can help you share it. Many times people feel they can't discuss something. Your lawyers can help you learn. They can help information come in and come out so that you're protected before the new vulnerability is known in the world and can hurt you and, frankly, others. We are all in this together. And having the lawyers with us not only protects us, it protects our way of life as a civil society. The second point I'd make is what I've often said to my leadership upstairs is, I never want to be your vice president of business prevention. There are times when we have to do things differently or advise differently, but when they understand in corporate leadership at the top that you are teamed tightly with their counsel, they understand that you're looking to protect the business. We in cybersecurity, whatever level cybersecurity you're in, you are protecting something beyond cybersecurity, whether it's in healthcare or in information technology or water or defense or power, or the very compute power that puts us all here today. You're protecting something else. You're, like I always use the analogy, I love fast cars. So that's the reason that you have anti-lock brakes. It's not to stop fast, it's so you can drive fast. I wouldn't share that with my law enforcement friends too often.
Or your kids.
Yes, my niece is just about to get her driver's license and we go 55. But what I would say though is your legal counsels help you move out more quickly. They help you be more aggressive against this adversary. And they give you the alacrity that up to now only our enemies have had.
All right. Adam.
I would say engage legal early and often. I mean, we've all heard something's held up with legal. Sometimes that's fair to say. It's not fair to say when you bring us in at the 11th hour. Fortunately, that doesn't happen often at Capital One, but there's merit to it. So I think the key thing is getting legal engaged early in a process allows for kind of discussion of legal risks on parallel paths with other risks that you're encountering. But there may be some issues that require third-party negotiation, increased governance, looking at saying, okay, you know what, this risk feels okay to me, but ultimately I need to socialize and escalate it up so that others can make sure that it's acceptable to them also and kind of consistent with the risk tolerance for the organization. I think doing that, you build that into the process. Again, it goes to that trust and confidence. And look, there may still be times where you're prioritizing and reprioritizing. That's all we do in cyber all the time. It's kind of you're racking and stacking what's going on any given day to try to make sure you're delivering for your organization. But ultimately, it may be that something is held up with legal, even if you bring us in early, and that may not be a bad thing. It may be, there may be a reason for that ultimately does protect the CISO and the company itself.
All right. Final words to send us out.
Now, some great wisdom shared already so far. Thank you all. I would add, be intentional and build a proactive plan on what it is that you want to work on over the next 6 to 12 months with your counsel, so that you just don't sit back and wait for something to happen. I think that's a really, really key aspect. And I had another interesting thought that completely disappeared. So, We'll see if
Okay.
it comes back. Just keeping it real.
Stay tuned.
All right. Well, and I'll do a little bit of a fade out in case you think of it and you raise your hand really fast. But otherwise, I think we're done here. And so I want to thank our panelists.
I remembered.
See, I knew
See?
it would
Isn't that
happen.
amazing?
That's why your lawyers are here for you.
That's right. Thank you so much. Remember that your legal counsel is a company's attorney. They're not your attorney.
Ah, good point.
And so, but your legal counsel in cyber is someone you can have a very real discussion about what do I as the CISO need to think about when it comes to indemnification and protection as an individual, and they can help counsel you perhaps a little bit in how you might go and approach that to understand what are the circumstances in which you might need to have someone who represents you as an individual.
All right. Well, thank you very much,
Yeah.
Chris, Adam, Phyllis, Angela. Thank you very much. And thank you all very much. Have a good rest of your
Thank you.
conference.
Thanks.